So before I introduce our guests, I'd like to give you a very brief history on the Church of Christ building. So behind me is Sierra Madre Church of Christ. It's located on the corner of North Lima and Laurel. And many of you may have driven past it numerous times. But what a lot of people don't know, that this was originally the Temple Beth Israel, which was established in 1931 to serve the local Jewish community in parts of San Gabriel Valley. On the grounds, not only was the church, but several buildings from Sierra Madre School were actually moved onto the property and utilized by the congregation. So from 1931 until 1966, it remained part of the Jewish community's temple. In 1966, it was sold to the Church of Christ and has remained a part of that congregation since then. I believe in 66, the Sierra Madre congregation and those that were involved there moved to the Arcadia Temple. What is interesting about this, there's a piece of Sierra Madre history that is very unique in that in typical tradition, when Jewish temples were made, and this dates back all the way to King Solomon's temple several thousand years ago, a cornerstone was put in place of the building, and it's very symbolic. I'm going to have Cantor Ruth, who I'll introduce here in a minute. She can speak on the significance of that. But when the Church of Christ bought it, there was a Sierra Madre resident, Jim Wright, who was a friend of my father's, and Jim lived on North Hermosa across the street from Sierra Madre Elementary School. He had a small machine shop in the back of the yard. Jim removed that cornerstone, and for 60 years, four Sierra Madre families have protected that and been the stewards of that. It went from Jim Wright to another family, Steve Farrell, who is here to join us also, Dave Poole and his family, and then my family took the stone in, I believe it was 2001 when Steve Farrell moved to the island of Kauai. The stone was given to Ruth, and that's really where the story begins. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Cantor Ruth, another Sierra Madrean, who actually currently has possession of the stone again. But the stone has taken quite a unique turns here and there, and that's what we'll discuss today. Okay, so we're here today. I'm here with Cantor Ruth from Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center, and with Steve Farrell. We're going to discuss some of the history of Sierra Madre. Sierra Madre, at one point, we had the Temple Beth Israel, which is the picture behind me. And there's just a very interesting history of the Cornerstone. So, Cantor Ruth, if you don't mind first, if you could kind of explain to us the responsibilities of a cantor and how that fits into the temple.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am super excited about this opportunity. I've never been in a podcast, so that's exciting. Um, the responsibilities of a cantor traditionally are to lead prayer at religious services in a Jewish community. Throughout centuries, cantors focused on learning the different ways in which we chant or sing or recite texts from the Bible or prayers that we've been passed down from one generation to the other one. There are many models of cantors. I particularly focus on being the best clergy person that I can be. Part of my vision of a cantor is to lead congregations in prayer, but also to help lead, to be a partner with the rabbi in leading congregations. I'm also trained in singing, and I guess that's what most people know me for. But we do a little bit of everything.
Right. And you play a pretty mean guitar, just like Steve Farrell there.
Oh, I do not play a mean guitar. I just use it to hopefully accompany my heart and my soul as I chant.
Right. And so the way you and I met and the way that I remember it is it started, I had taken my mother to the doctors, and in the waiting room, there was another woman from the temple, Carol, and her last name, I can't remember right now. And
Parker, probably.
pardon?
Parker.
Yes, Carol Parker. And she and I were just talking, and I mentioned, oh, I have the Cornerstone from Temple Beth Israel in Sierra Madre. And she goes, oh, can I have a picture? I said, I'll throw it up on Facebook. And if I remember correctly, you saw that and reached out to me. And we had a conversation that was very potent. In my thinking, all the years that I had it, the Cornerstone, it was something that I believed was kind of the property of Sierra Madre. It was a Sierra Madre, historically Sierra Madre. And if you remember, you made the comment, if I ever wanted to give it back to the rightful owners. And that stuck very hard with me. It's like, you know what? I believe that she's right. So maybe, Steve, if you could kind of talk about how Jim Wright took it, how you got it, how long you had it, up to the point when you gave it to me.
Sure. Do you have a picture you can handy of it?
It'll be on the website.
Okay, it'll be posted with the thing.
Yes.
Well, I was a young fellow with a family living on Wilson Street behind Alverno, and um, Sierra Madre was always a special place. I even I've always thought even with certain spiritual connections and destinies tied to it. Sierra Madre to me was that special. It not only is it a special just from a geographical standpoint, how groovy the canyon is and the little Santa Anita Canyon stream flowing through it and all the things. But I had moved there as a young family and was interested in it just kind of like putting roots down. And old Jim Wright was he was a retired machinist that lived behind Sierra Madre School, or at least the school. What is the school that's kind of at Grandview and
Sierra Madre
Grove?
Elementary.
Elementary school, right? And he was the most interesting fellow, a very loving old fella. And anytime we would walk by, he'd insist we come in, and his wife would serve coffee and little muffins and things like that. And then he'd take you out to his little tiny shop and show you where he was working on lapidary things. He was he was sort of a Renaissance guy in his own right, you know what I mean? And we became friends. I mean, he sort of became the grandpa I never had, and in some ways he liked having us coming around, the young people, as it were, and we were young, active. We were very active in sort of what was called the Jesus movement, trying to rediscover the roots of the Judeo-Christian, God that we love. Trying to figure out how that all worked and all that, and young enthusiasts, I guess. And Jim and his wife were getting on in age, and I think they knew the writing on the wall where he was going to have to check them both into maybe an old folks home or something like that. And he was looking around the yard, and he eyed me up, and he saw me looking at the cornerstone in his yard. He goes, "Would you take care of this for me?" And I said, well, sure. What is it? And he kind of described it a little bit. Of course, it was heavy as sin. I don't think I could even lift it today. But I took it home, and I thought, well, now what do I do with it? So I just put it in my front yard, almost like a point of interest or a special thing, or and and people would, come visit me, and they'd see it, and they'd go, well, that's interesting. And I said, no kidding, that's interesting. And I would remind people that there used to be a temple made out of, river stone, kind of like a dome shape, as I recall, that preceded where Bethany Church is now. And it was sort of an albatross as far as, what to do with it, because it was kind of big. And my wife just kind of raised her eyebrows. I'd move it around the yard. And as you say, I had a buddy a couple of doors down, and he also acknowledged it was super interesting. So I think I said, well, well, you can have it for a year. It can be in your front yard. You know what I mean? So it did literally go back and forth. You know what I mean? I'd get tired of it, or I'd want to garden in the area where it was sitting, and I'd take it down to Dave Poole's house, and then he would bring it back to my house. And well, then came the time in my infinite wisdom where I decided to move to Hawaii to live happily ever after. And I thought, what am I going to do with this cornerstone? It weighs a bloody ton, but I love it. I love the engraving was precise, had the Star of David, as I recall, and it was just, there just wasn't anything more interesting to me. I thought, well, I better give it to Glenn. He's not leaving Sierra Madre. He's part of this town, and he's got roots so deep he couldn't leave if he wanted to. So I'm going to give it to Glenn. That way I know that the cornerstone is safe. And so Glenn said, sure. And it ended up in his front yard. So the Wandering Stone had about three hosts that I know of. And the last one being Glenn. And then he told me the story, how it morphed over to getting back to you folks, the original owners, I guess you'd say, and it was just a lovely story, and so I'm glad to be a part of telling its history. That's about it.
So, Ruth, I know I didn't prepare you for this. Can you kind of inform us the historical significance in Jewish tradition of a cornerstone? Probably, in my understanding, going all the way back to King Solomon's temple.
Yes. Traditionally, a cornerstone is a symbol of the commitment to lay down roots that a Jewish community has in a particular space. It'll represent we are full of symbols that we use to be reminders of what we carry as a community and as a people. And so the cornerstone was of a synagogue is the preliminary commitment to a future settled space that particular community will inhabit. It's more it's not only for, in this case, the Sierra Madre community, but for the people of that community to, as they see it, they are reminded that that we could have a relationship in this place, not only with the land at this moment, but with the neighbors, and that we ought to behave in a way that honors that commitment.
Yeah, you just mentioned that we have a relationship with the land in this moment. And when we actually did the dedication at the temple, well, even beforehand, there was a ceremony on December 9th, 2023 in Kirsting Court, the lighting of the menorah that you hosted. And it was at that point that we gave the cornerstone to you to be the next caregiver, the next steward, and hopefully for eternity here with that. And then about a year later, because of scheduling, about a year later, we met at the Pasadena Temple on January 5th last year, 2025. And I remember it was very impactful and potent when we did that. You brought the children there, you gave them historical accounts, I believe, and you discussed that, what you said, the relationship to a place at that time, and that place may change. And little did we realize that 2 days later, the Eaton fire would come through and completely devastated the temple and center. But you were able to save the stone. Can you talk about that?
Sure. That January 5th, which was my birthday, by the way, was very intense for us too, because we Jews have unspoken and eternal connection to the land of Israel just by virtue of our history. But since we've dispersed in many places of the world, um, I personally feel a sense of gratitude and honor to be among the people, other people, not only being in a place where only Jews live, right? So um, I wanted to make sure that the kids knew that um, at that at that time we were connected, not only to the land of Israel, but to the Altadena and the Pasadena and the Sierra Madre community through the love and the caring, not only of the Jewish community, but of everyone else that made that cornerstone still remained and brought back to the owners of that synagogue. So um, I think it was important that we don't take things for granted, that we are the wandering Jews. We are, and that our relationship to our tradition um, depends on us carrying that no matter where we go. And so that's why I meant about at that time at the 1434 North Altadena Drive, which, by the way, we have plans to rebuild. And I do have the cornerstone with me in my home.
It's
In its
heavy,
home in
isn't it?
Sierra Madre for a while.
Yes, which I'm very proud. I love, Steve, that description of the Sierra Madre that you gave is incredible. I feel it wholeheartedly, and I love that town.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Seems to love certain places, you know. I
yeah,
mean, he just
yes,
does.
yes,
And one of the phrases that keeps in my mind is "remove not the ancient landmark." You know, it's of course that the inference in the Old Testament is, of course, boundary lines. Don't encroach on my land with your land by moving the corner or the marker that we set there. But your description talks about something far deeper. It's like the first badge of statement of we're committing here to this land, that God's
yes,
presence will be here.
yes,
And that's wonderful.
yes. I think so.
Ruth, on those lines too, I did some looking research in some of the very old Sierra Madre newspapers, and the Temple Beth Israel was very much involved in interfaith communities in Sierra Madre at that time, which if you think back 60 years, I'm not so sure that was something that was often done. But it seemed like in Sierra Madre that the inner workings of the interface, it was alive and well, and a lot of cooperation at that time.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that either. I think that probably is a testimony to um, the temple's members to understand that when we all thrive, we all benefit from it, and that God's intention to nurture us humans does not happen in the vacuum, and it's not only for Jews.
Right.
And so, if we learn and grow and love the places that we inhabit, that includes the people that we live with, Jewish or not, it's irrelevant.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you from my standpoint, and I would imagine from Steve's also, we're both really glad that the stone is back with the rightful owners, will be protected, and you guys will do what's necessary.
We will. We'll hold. Well, my husband and I were currently holding it, and we're gonna take a rain check. And when we finish the building and we find a place for the cornerstone, you guys will hopefully be able to join us, and we will rededicate it as part of the continuous chain of loving people who cared about one another independently of how they chose to worship God. It's the same thing.
Right. Thank you so much. And briefly, if you will, or if you can, the current status of the community now that you're at a temporary location.
we are currently worshiping out of the United Methodist Church in Pasadena, in downtown Pasadena. We are swimming along, taking one day at a time, not taking anything for granted, planning ahead for the rebuilding, holding our congregants and supporting them. There's a few of our congregants who still don't have homes.
Right.
It wasn't only that we lost our spiritual home; we actually have congregants who lost their home. And so, supporting one another, appreciating what's important, working towards it, and making plans and trying to figure out how we're gonna fundraise and build. And I think we're thriving. I think it's the understanding that our congregants got to experience by just this tragedy of losing the building. Suddenly there's an innate understanding that we are all in it together, and that even though we need our walls in our home, we need each other more. And so we gather whatever we can and make it work. Keep
Good.
moving.
Anything else, Steve, you'd like to add?
Well, I would like a point of clarification. I know that the original temple built with river stones that was a dome, was that on the land that the Church of Christ took over, or where Bethany Church was?
The old Rock Church was Bethany Church,
Was the Bethany Church
where they
Okay.
are now. Now, an interesting piece of history on that had several stained glass windows that
Mhm.
Bob Jones, who was a Sierra Madrean, took. And when he moved to Colorado, he donated those to a local church in Colorado Springs that have them on display. But the Rock Church was at the Bethany Church location now.
So that wasn't the temple. The temple was where the Church of Christ is?
Correct. Same building.
Okay. Oh, same building.
Same building, the one that's in the photo behind me.
Oh, so that circle used to have a Jewish star in it, probably.
I believe so, yeah.
Probably. And
Exactly.
it was probably a stained glass, I would guess.
Yeah.
It
Okay.
was too. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
good.
So
wonderful.
that's on Highland Avenue.
No, it's on North Lima and Laurel, across the street from the Kenny House.
Laurel. Yeah, it's kind of tucked in behind there. Yeah.
Yes.
Southeast.
Is that still functioning, that church, the
Yes.
Church of Christ?
Yes.
Okay.
Small congregation.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Ruth, and
Thank you.
thank you
Thank
for
you
everything you're doing. Great.
I look forward to seeing you at the dedication of the new
Absolutely.
temple.
We'll make sure.